We are so lucky to have Ramon Diaz, who is a former student athlete, played football here in 2005 to 2009 with Fitz, and we're just so excited to have you here today. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us.
Came from a pretty small country town just nearby, south of Chicago, south of Evanston. Just the experience of in Evanston, I think anybody who plays here in any sport can relate. I mean, I think it's a unique experience getting this kind of Ivy League education, and then playing at such a high level. I mean, you have, I think, what everybody wants to see, and I think that as a young man, that's what you wanted to show people, was everything we were supposed to be. Yeah, I think that as I look back, I don't know if I could ever really fully explain from the experience of the athlete, what we were demanded, what was demanded from us with the time that we had. And I don't, as you can relate, I'm sure, to a certain level, I think it was across the board with sports. I don't think it was just football. I think it was a wonderful experience for the education part, but I think the sacrifice is hard to really explain, what we did for those 5 years, or if you're a redshirt, but 4 years for most athletes. And mental health wasn't a thing yet. I mean, it wasn't, I can tell, I mean, among us, all the athletes, it wasn't talked about. And so for me, being diagnosed with, so now I know the actual diagnosis was mild to severe depression. I didn't really understand the impact it had on my life until I left Northwestern. But I would say that I wish, and if I could go back, because I get this question asked a lot to me, what would I change? I don't think I would have changed anything, but I think what you're all doing here is incredible. I wish I would have had an organization like this to support me. But I think there was a lot of athletes, and I won't say any names just for the sake of their own respect of their privacy, because I didn't really get the permission to share names. So I think there was many guys on the team who would have also benefited from mental health support. I think some of them probably could have been diagnosed with some kind of anxiety disorder, or definitely depression. As I look back, I can specifically think of events with certain teammates who I could have easily, could have benefited from some kind of mental health support, if not weekly, treatment, intervention, things like that. And then some guys I think should have not been playing anymore. I mean, there were specific one or two guys that come to mind that in my clinical opinion, I don't think that they should have ever been allowed on the field again. And so, I can see that, and I have the obviously authority, I think, as a clinical therapist now to say that. And I think that would have been, if I would have been in that room and knowing the things that I know now, I would have said, yeah, you can't go back. I mean, I don't think you can keep yourself safe. I don't think you should be around other people who are going to hit you really hard, I think, with what you got going on. So, but I think it's going to be a work in progress, because everything that happened to me, there wasn't a willingness to share, because I think for different pressures coming from different places. And I speak generally for a purpose, but I think the pressures that were put on us to perform, in my clinical opinion, I think that created, again, a place where asking for help was going to come at a cost. And so policies that are in place so nobody can know, but I didn't feel like anyone wanted to know. And that was just, again, my personal experience. I can't say that was anyone's intention.
What has that taught you that you've been able to provide to your clinic, being a trained clinical therapist? The main motivation I got into clinical mental health, obviously, is having a mental health illness, and the other part is so much of what happens in sport, the pressures, again, I think, to be able to speak out on that. And it's a struggle, because we do live in a society in general where sport, I mean, I know
some research and I presented a couple conferences on youth sport, and just it's literally today in the U.S. has become $1 billion market. And so youth sport has become this thing that like nobody knows how to control. It's exploded in terms of dollar amounts, and some of the athletes I've worked with, it's devastating from a mental health perspective. But again, the same contention is there. Like, I can advise parents, I can advise schools, I can advise athletic directors of high schools, of counties. But at the end of the day, if people aren't willing to see the issue for what it is, this is why we have the suicide rate as high as it is among adolescents. The average age for burnout now for youth sport is the age 11 for girls and 12 for boys. So a young girl and a young boy will more likely retire from sport at that age. And so you and I are like, I think I'm laughing inside, right? Because I think 12 years old, I don't even know if I knew the word burnout, let alone I would have thought like something's burning, right? Like literal. I wouldn't even understand what the concept is. And now kids don't want to do it anymore because of the pressures. And I think, again, it comes from bigger institutions that have put the $1 billion into this market. And so I think the struggle is always like, why is mental health not a topic? And I think it's intentional, right? I'll say this. I mean, if I get an athlete who comes to our clinic, the fear is like, if you come to me, the coach is fearful that I might distract them from their performance. So there's this interesting dynamic that the coaches I've spoken to at the youth sport and at the high school level, it's like, yeah, but I need them to focus on the game. So there's this, we live in a capitalist economy, like, let's be honest here. So I think, when you have this political economy where performance equals revenue for a lot of sports, the desire to win comes at all cost. And that was the mentality that was drilled into me since I was a kid. I mean, I was a highly recruited athlete for a reason. I ended up with 25 Power 5 conference offers. Northwestern was just among many that I had. And so the main question I always ask when I'm in my clinic is, how can someone so high functioning like myself suffer so much underneath of it all, right? And I think for a lot of kids, we can prevent some of these things. So as like an aspiring psychiatrist, as a clinician, we can prevent some of these onsets, of clinical disorders if we just have the right infrastructures. But that means you have to get the right people to fund it. I think it can be both, right? You think you can win games and you can still have a healthy person. Healthier people make stronger people, and stronger people make stronger communities. But if sport is the value and the priority, then community then is irrelevant, and then the human being is irrelevant. And athletes are not superheroes, we're human. So I think that it's hard. It's a struggle to convince parents that, when I have a child in my office and I say, hey, she's not eating 3 meals a day. I'm a little concerned about that. Well, her cross-country coach says that they don't, they need to minimize their calories. It's like, okay, well, I'm suggesting to you that, that's not healthy. Where is the pressure coming from? Why would you, in my clinical opinion, why would you sacrifice your child's health for a mere possibility of like getting to state? So it's really intriguing where like I can't do anything, like at that point, like, well, okay, that's your choice, but I recommend this was going to happen to your daughter if you don't stop this now. And so that's the fight I think that I typically have with athletes is, I think it's more from the parents. And then, the mindset of like, the medal is more important than the health. And I certainly don't think that was I don't know if that's their intention. I think the parents would immediately say to me, like, we love little Susie. And I would say, well, I think love can be probably defined in different ways. I'm wondering if you'd allow me to define it differently for you, because I think your daughter is suffering.
And to be able to share your story from a student athlete here to a clinical therapist is so important. And I guess lastly, I just want to ask, what message would you give student athletes here now, after everything that you experienced, trained, went through? What message would you want to give them?
I'm speaking to somebody when I say this. You're hurting and you need help. And if you don't stop, you're going to end up killing yourself. I mean, we like this, like, is pretty normal for my world, but that's what we get, right? We get suicide ideation, we get suicidal self-harming, we have everything from, again, eating disorders to substance use disorders. It always starts with vaping, of course, nowadays, and then it goes to cannabis, and then, and then you have these other, what they call harder drugs. And to hear, I would have loved somebody to just say that to me and say, I know that you're hurting, and I know that you're in a lot of pain, and you need help. And I want to listen. And I think if I would have heard that, I might have not kept playing. I might have quit, probably, and I would have just stayed in school here and finished my degree, which I did. But I would just say that. I know people are hurting here. I know people, even if you don't, I would say people, just because you're hurting doesn't mean you have a mental health illness. But I know people are hurting, and I know people are suffering. I know people don't know how to talk about it. And there are people willing to help. And people like me, I know there's others. But I have, obviously, Northwestern has a special place in my heart. So if whoever that person is, or people or teammates, you are being heard, and you're being given a voice. And I know they want to thank you if they ever come and speak to you all, and obviously they can contact me, and if anyone understands, it's going to be someone who has gone through the program.